go. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening to you all. Good evening. How are you? How are you all? So, tonight we're going to be doing a movie review and plot outline of the movie Ambulance. Ambulance by a film directed by Michael Bay. As we know, Michael Bay is all about those explosions and, fast energy, lots of tension, suspense kind of movies, known for the Transformers. Um, Ambulance, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, and some other unknown actors that were actually really good. I mean, if this movie probably made their careers. Now, before we get into doing the movie review and the plot outline, I first want to say that this movie review and plot outline of the movie Ambulance, 2002 movie, which you can find on Netflix right now, is brought to you by my book, Dialogues, Oklahoma Independent Cinema. You can buy it off Amazon right now if you want a little culture, my little niche of the world, independent movie world. Well, here it is. You can find my book on Amazon, $14.99 plus shipment. It's an excelente book that you can pick up off Amazon. And it's brought to you by the Stay Gold Film Festival, which is currently open on Film Freeway. You can submit your short films from around the world. Regular deadline is December 24th. And the festival is 2026, May 2000, yeah. So, I have my critiques. Of the movie. I think I want to get to those first. And the character arcs, which were interesting. The whole movie, though, I will say, it keeps you on edge. It really does. It keeps you on edge. It's fast paced. It starts a little slow, but it like for the first 10 minutes or so, it's just like introducing the characters, as movies do. But it really kicks in. It really kicks in. What's up, Ken Godfrey? How you doing? Welcome to the movie review and plot outline of Ambulance. There's a few things I found that were errors in the movie. It's really hard to be like, oh yeah, Michael Bay messed up here, but I can tell you exactly where he messed up in the movie. And there's a few weird plot holes and a few story points where you're like, well, why didn't they just do this? I'm the glue man. I cast fireball on the stream, he says. Or she says. I don't know who that is. Alex says, hi, how's your day going? Pretty good. Pretty good. Thanks for asking. So let's get off the critiques I have about the movie. I love the movie, don't get me wrong. I loved it. It keeps you entertained from beginning to end. It's well put together. The cinematography is out of this world, and the way he shoots it and tells the story, fabulous work. But there's some issues, and we're gonna get to them. So, and the cuts are so quick that you blink and you miss the issues. You blink, you miss it. So because I watched it over and over and over to get a good sense of the movie, the characters, the story, the tone, the feel, the theme, all that stuff, and the shots, I noticed a few errors, and this happens in movies all the time. And every time I review a movie, I always find one or two errors, but this one had a lot. Compared to the other movies, I'm actually surprised how many errors this movie had compared to the other movies I reviewed, because they're so quick that you barely notice them. So my number one complaint and critique about the movie is the different, what do you call them? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's the continuity errors, right? So for instance, there's a continuity error when there's a policeman who we clearly see go inside. He's very distinct. He's got like long kind of hair. He's part of the SIS group. I think there's like four of them. Anyways, he rushes in the building, and then somehow magically he's outside in a car. He gets out of a car to try to stop the bad guys. And you're just kind of wondering how he was inside the building. We saw him go inside. He didn't just go like in the lobby, he went really in there. So, how did he go from inside the building to outside of the building, inside of a car? And he like stops, he stops in front of the ambulance and he comes out with his gun. It's like, whoa, whoa, does he do magic tricks? That's pretty amazing. The other critique I have is whenever the bad guys, I say bad guys, but they're like the anti-hero, right? You're kind of rooting for the bad guys. The bad guys, the bank robbers, they go in the ambulance. When they get stopped by the police, this is the same critical error that I see with the cop running it who was inside the building. Now magically he's outside. So Danny's a bank robber and Will, his brother, is a bank robber. So they take the ambulance, right? They stop because cops stop them. And so Danny's hiding in the corner and he tells the EMTs like just lie, tell them that we got to go, right? There's a cop, don't tell us we're here, we shoot you. And the driver Will is actually the other bank robber. Anyways, when they put in their huge black bags full of money, they literally opened the doors of the ambulance and set it right there. They set it right, like three bags, like two or three bags right there in front of the doors. So the police, they run back to check the ambulance. When they open it, they magically don't see the bags full of money. They don't see it. They just, oh, there's nothing here to see. Nothing here to see. And the EMT, you got the cop who's been shot laying on the gurney. You got the EMT saying, we gotta go. There's a cop shot, we gotta go. And the guys they just miss it. They magically miss the bags full of money, which is like, what the hell? How does that happen? Anyways, I guess we let that slide. The other critique I have, which is again, it's about I just said it a minute ago. It's when stuff doesn't match, right? There's a shot. They come to a stop because there's helicopters. They've actually driven quite a ways away from the bank, and they stopped in an alleyway because they see a helicopter. Anyways, there's a part of the scene. Cam is the EMT. She runs out and is able to escape for a second, but Danny pulls his gun out and stops her from running away. And he's like, "Stop, stop, come back in here!" Right? So during those clips, there's an edit where Cam has her hands up and she's wearing gloves and they're covered in blood. But one cut shows one glove that's torn up, completely torn up, and then it cuts to the gloves being untorn. It's very quick, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But I thought that was weird. I thought that was, oh, come on. How can you miss such a big thing like that? How could you miss something that big? That's easy. That's easy. That's first level filmmaker mistake. You know what I'm saying? How can you make that kind of mistake? It just blows my mind. Come on, Michael Bay. Come on. What are you doing? So, anyways, there's another critique I have. It's a little bit. Let's see if I try to remember all these critiques that I have. That these are. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what you see. Crossover 51 says, "Yo, name any NBA player." NBA. My favorite all time, of course, Michael Jordan. Anyways, so the other critique I have, let's see, there's a few others. I hope I don't miss any. Let's see, the midpoint. Oh yeah, the midpoint. So there's a part where the cop inside the ambulance, he's shot, he's bleeding. They discover another bullet, and which is weird because Will was the guy who shot the cop, so he would know if he got shot twice. But it seems like everybody just forgot that he got shot twice, and suddenly, oh, magically, oh, we forgot we shot him a second time. Yeah, we better take care of the second wound, or he's gonna die. Of course, in midpoint, what happens in the midpoint, the story takes another turn. They're still on the same main mission of what starts in Act Two, but there's something that happens that they have to take care of in order to get to the finish line, right, of the story. So it makes sense story mechanics that, oh, we got a problem here. We have to save the cop's life. That's what happens after the midpoint, right? That's the turn. But it doesn't make sense in terms of we know we shot the guy twice. Why are we just now discovering this? And second of all, why does the cop not know he was shot twice? You would think, because in the scenes in the beginning, he's like, "Ah, my leg, my leg." But if you're shot in the chest, I'm pretty sure you would know you got shot in the chest, like that's or in the stomach. Like you would be like, "That's fucking painful as f and painful." You wouldn't be like, "Oh, just my leg." You would feel pain in your stomach. So, anyways, I thought that was really weird. It makes sense as a story mechanic, but it doesn't make sense logically. Like, oh, Will shot the guy twice, but we're only going to take care of one wound in the beginning of the movie. And then later in the midpoint of the movie, we're just going to now figure out he was shot twice. That just it doesn't add up. But for the sense of the story mechanics, sure, let's use it. But here's another critical problem that I spotted. There's a point where they're operating on him, right? They're operating on the police officer. It's a really tense moment, and there's a shot where it doesn't match up. It's the gloves again. So the gloves have been a big problem in this movie because I'm sure they went through a lot of gloves. They probably had to like take them off, put them back on, like get the blood on there. They probably did that so many times. But anyways, there's a scene where the cop's waking up and they're doing surgery on him. And so Will punches the cop in the face to knock him out. And when he punches him in the face, his gloves are completely clean from blood. But the prior shots, he had his hands inside the body, and you can see that his gloves were bloody. And then after he punches him in the face with these very super clean gloves, it cuts to him having the bloody gloves. It happens quick, but again, it's an error. It's definitely a huge error. Like I would have been like, nah, that's a big problem. We're not gonna go with that. The other problem I saw that's not a huge problem. Again, these aren't huge problems, but if we're gonna be like super detailed to the millisecond of each frame, then it matters. But if you're just like, whatever, it doesn't matter. No, a lot of people are not gonna notice this kind of thing. Is I think the attitude. Oh, we cut so quick, no one's gonna notice. Well, I noticed. Anyways, there's a scene where Danny and Will in the front seat, and they start fighting. And so there's a moment where Danny grabs a flashlight off the wall, and he's gonna hit Will, but Will takes the flashlight away from him, and then suddenly, there's a phone call. Somehow magically the flashlight ends up back on the wall. Like he's on the call, but then like we don't see him put it there. I think the logic thing would be in a situation like that, you just put it down on the ground. You just toss it. So I thought it was strange that right after they use the flashlight and they took it off the wall, that it's just magically on the wall. And nobody put it there. It was just magically there. So I thought that was kind of weird. Not a big deal, not a big deal, but again, these things kind of matter when it comes to details. Anyways, there's another critical point where there's like, and this is very small. This is a very small thing. Again, these are all small things, but they kind of add up. There's a moment where the ambulance has its lights on, and then it doesn't, and then it does. So shots back to back. I thought that was kind of weird and inconsistent. And then there's another shot where they kind of repeat the same thing that happens in the beginning. They have this cop who is very distinct. You can see him. He's kind of has like a little bit of long hair, blondish. And so he runs in the building, right? And then later we see him outside come out of a car, which is like really weird. So I call that phenomenon using the extra as much as possible. So they do the same thing. They make the same mistakes later in like Act 3 near the climax where they have these Mexican, cartel people with machine guns. Well, there's a guy who's very distinct. He's wearing a sweater and shorts, very distinct looking. You can point him out easily. Well, he's upstairs in the room where everybody gets shot up to hell, but somehow he magically is downstairs again, and he's shooting at Danny I thought that was strange. I thought that was strange how he was upstairs where they shot everybody, but then he was magically downstairs. And not only that, they have more shootouts, and he survives. I guess he survives all the shootouts. He's able to get a grenade launcher and shoot, shoot at the ambulance. But I thought it was really weird because he was upstairs with everybody else, and somehow he magically ends up downstairs. It's almost like they were like, maybe they made a mistake. Like it was like, okay, so all the extras we used for the scene, they're all dead. Who wasn't in the scene? It's quite possible the actor was like, I wasn't in the scene, but he really was. Nobody noticed, and they use him again for downstairs. It's quite possible. I don't know, but I thought that was strange. What else? What else? I think that's all the critiques I have. Now, the big story critique that I have is there's a moment where they're able to shake off the helicopters. They're able to get away from the cops. They get underneath a bridge, and they're doing this thing called what's it called? The Texas switch up or something, where they have multiple cars that look the same, and then after a minute, they're all going to disperse at the same time, so it confuses the cops or whatever. It's a military thing. Anyways, what's really weird about this is that the, this was a huge opportunity to end everything. But for some reason, I don't know if that was stupidity or I don't know what, it just did not make any effing sense to me. As far as story goes, as far as like if you're a bank robber and you're just trying to get away from the cops and you actually get away from the cops and this is your moment to actually run away, why would you do what they did? It makes no effing sense. Okay. What they did was they sprayed their ambulance green, which was a really shitty job. It was comical, but it was like, no cop's gonna buy this. No cop's gonna be like, oh, there's an ambulance that we've been chasing, but now it's painted green. It's probably not that one. This isn't GTA, okay, where you just go in a garage, you paint your car, now all the cops don't know where you are. That's not how it works in real life. Like if you go to a bridge in an ambulance, you paint it green, they see a green ambulance leave that bridge, they're gonna stop it. They're not dumb. So I thought that was really stupid. Like it didn't make sense to me. Like I get, of course, they had other ambulances go off. They had like 3 or 5 other ambulances go off in the bridge. But here's what I don't get. Why not just leave the ambulance behind, get in a different car, which there were several different cars they could have got inside. They could have split ways, which when you split ways, it makes it harder to catch the robbers, right? It makes it way harder. But no, instead they want to stick together. They want to stay in the ambulance, paint it green, like somehow magically that's gonna make it like less obvious. It just didn't make any sense. Story wise, it didn't make any sense. What they should have done is just left the ambulance there. They should have separated ways and gone in different cars and left while the other ambulances left the bridge. That's how they could have gotten away. But no, they did the stupidest thing ever, which was just paint the ambulance green, stick to the ambulance, and then to make matters worse, there's a cop in the ambulance and there's the EMT. And where do they drive? They drive to a secret layer of the cartel, which means they have to kill the cop and the EMT because they're not going to let a cop and EMT to a secret layer of the cartels. They're not going to let them go. So they stupidly put him in this position. Now, story mechanics, it makes sense, but logically, it doesn't. If Will actually, and he does, you see out throughout the movie, Will's like, I'm gonna get you out of this. I'm gonna save your life. He saves the cop's life. He does whatever he can to protect the EMT. But this was the moment that could have saved them and not put him in this really effed up situation, which was they drive into a secret cartel lair and they brought the cop and the EMT. What do you think was going to happen? You think they were just going to let him go? Like, how stupid are you? What they should have done is abandon the ambulance, let them be there in the ambulance, let the cops catch up to the ambulance. Boom, easy, they're safe. right? And like I said, the robbers could have gone their own separate ways and they could have gotten away. But no, they had to make it really super complicated. They did something really stupid. But story wise, when you think of the mechanics, if you're a writer and you're trying to make something work, like, yeah, I like the ending to be where the cop and the EMT are in the cartel and, they have to, like, they have this, like, dark moment of the soul, dark night of the soul. It sets up that moment. As a writer, you're thinking that makes sense. But if you're in a position of the characters, it doesn't make sense. The choices they made doesn't make sense. They would have never made those choices. It was like suddenly they're all super smart. They're smart. They make every smart move, but suddenly they make the stupidest move they could ever done, and they created an awful situation for themselves. Doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. That story point was just meant to set up the movie, the ending, but it doesn't make sense psychologically. It doesn't make sense as far as the objective of what they were trying to do, which is get away, right? And Will was trying to save the cop and the EMT, right? And Danny wouldn't have cared either way. He didn't care either way if they lived or die. But like I said, to have the story you wanted, which was there was the writer's forced hand. It's like, okay, let's do it this way, because then it leads us to the climax. It leads us to the dark night of the soul for the character. But like I said, logically, the characters wouldn't have made those choices. It just the writer forced those choices upon the characters, and the story was very forced. It didn't make sense. It was like, what are they doing? Anyways, so that's my critique of the whole thing. I had a story issue there, and there was a lot of shots and things that didn't match up, like lots of them. So which they happen so fast that you don't really think about it. You're entertained by the movie. It's a very suspenseful. It moves fast, so it's like if you were to watch it one time, you would miss all these things. You wouldn't even think about them. But after watching them a few times and looking through it, it's like, oh, that didn't make any sense. Or wow, look at that! Look at that huge mistake. There's just so many mistakes. But like I said, it's got a fast pace, fast cuts. You miss a lot of things if you're not paying attention. Right? Just details, details. Anyways, so as far as that goes, it's probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Which is surprising, not surprising, because Michael Bay isn't necessarily the best story guy. He's more about the explosions. He's more about the spectacle. So in that term, it's like, that kind of makes sense that he would make these mistakes, right? Um, but he's still a great director. I mean, it's still an awesome movie. All the actors did amazing performances. There's a lot of emotion in there. There's a lot of ups and downs. One moment they're fighting, next moment they're having a heartfelt moment, next thing it's like funny, and then it's like action. So it's up and down with the emotions, right? But as far as that goes, that was good. The action was amazing, the explosions, all that. Okay, my other critique that I have that I didn't mention was, which was kind of weird. When they first do the bank robbery and the bank robbers are outside shooting their machine guns, they can't hit anyone. It's like, what's going on? They're shooting at the cops, but no one's getting hit. So it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you shoot a machine gun at somebody, you're gonna freaking hit them. Okay, you're shooting a machine gun. You're not shooting one bullet, two bullets. You might miss them. You shoot a machine gun, that's like, you're gonna hit something. You're gonna hit somebody, especially if they're all lined up running towards you. If you just go, you're gonna hit them. Probably, you're gonna hit all of them probably. So the fact that you had the bad guy shooting machine guns and they weren't hitting anything, they weren't hitting anyone. It's like, come on, like that's just bad direction. Like, bad direction, bad direction. There was such bad direction right there. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. It's hard to believe that you have three guys shooting machine guns at cops and no cops are getting hit. What is going on? And then the cops fire back, and of course, all the robbers die. But it's like, dude, the robbers were shooting first. How do you shoot first, miss everybody, just to get shot at and killed? It makes no sense. Anyways, so those are my critiques. I had a lot of critiques. If you missed them, you can always watch this back tomorrow. A lot of critiquing on the movie. I'm surprised how much critique and errors there were in this movie and how much I went through them. More so than any movie I've reviewed so far. It has the most errors, the most questionable story points, but at the same time, it was still a really good, fun movie. It's still better than most of the movies I reviewed, even though it had all these errors in it and a bunch of things that just didn't match up and story point errors and this and that. It was still a really fun movie. So it goes to show, as long as you make a really suspenseful, action-packed movie, you can have all the errors in the world, and your movie will still be watchable and entertaining and just, still beat out all the other movies. Um, so I thought that was interesting. Anyways, so one more thing I'll go through is the character arcs before I go through the whole plot line and everything. The character arcs are interesting. Sorta. I mean, it's not that interesting, but and almost a bit of a letdown, the ending, but at the same time it's got its moments, like because that's you get to a point where you're rooting for them, you're rooting for Danny and Will to get away from the cops, right? Like you're rooting for them. Oh, got a text. Anyways, you're rooting for them, and like I said, there's a story point where they could have gotten away, but that wouldn't have made for a good movie, right? So, you know they did all the such a bad story point. It's right at the end of Act Two. Horrible, horrible story point, but it makes sense in terms of creating the movie they wanted. Right? It's like a forced moment in the movie. You can call it a. You can say maybe the characters made mistakes, but I don't think they would have made those mistakes. In my opinion, they would have made smarter choices because they're very smart people. We're dealing with a Marine, and we're dealing with a guy who studied FBI and all this stuff, like police techniques. And so to me is like, how can you be so smart and yet make the stupidest choice you could ever made in the movie, right? Anyways, the character arcs are interesting. There's actually three to keep in mind. You have the EMT who's got a character arc. You have her name is Cam. You have Danny who's like who's played by Jake Gyllenhaal. He's very charismatic. He's leading the whole bank robbery, right? He's very persuasive and pushy. You have his character arc, and then you have the character arc of Will, who's like, you kind of ask yourself, who's the main character here? You don't. There's like, it's almost like there's three main characters, but not really. It's hard to say who the real main character is. You could say, well, it's Will. Will is the main character, but it's really hard to say who it is, because, like I said, they all have character arcs, which is interesting. Anyways, so the EMT Cam, her character arc is she goes from a person, what's up, friendship? Talking about a movie, plot line, all that stuff. Anyways, her character arc is she goes from a person who is disconnected from people, the people she helps and this and that. Although she can be very tentative to their needs and knows how to like keep them alive, and it is really like gracious and very tentative to the person, at the end of the day she's like, I don't care about them, it's just a job that I do. At the end of the movie she has a complete flip-flop, and we can see it in the movie. She really cares about the people she helps now. It's not like, oh, it's just a job. So that was her big flip flop. She re-entered her world as an EMT, but now she cares. Before she didn't care, now she cares. That was her big flip flop in the movie as her character arc. It's actually not bad. They use that to end the movie essentially. You have you can even include Amy Sharp, which is Will's wife. She doesn't really have a character arc, but she does play in there as like book endings to the movie. She appears in the beginning and the end and makes like a really quick appearance in the midpoint just to remind us that she's still there because it's Will's motivation. Amy's sick with cancer. They can't get insurance to cover the experimental surgery that's required, which is why he's taken part of this bank robbery in the first place. So, and at the end of the movie, even though the robbers fell miserably, uh, Will is able to get a chunk of money to his wife. So, in that term, it's kind of successful. So, it's interesting how that works out. You know, and then Danny has a bit of yeah, I'm talking about the movie. I did a whole critique about it, things that I noticed were wrong about the movie, errors, story points that didn't make sense, but they work as far as story mechanics. But as far as the characters making those choices, doesn't make sense at all. It was a bit goofy. But like I said, the writers had to force the characters in a way to put them in this position, but it didn't feel authentic. It felt really forced. Anyways, so you can see all that when I post this tomorrow. But anyways, I'm talking about the character arcs. Danny goes from he doesn't really change much other than towards the end. You know, he shoots people, kills people, and he goes from somebody who's a bank robber who's never killed anyone to somebody who's killed a lot of people now. And not just a lot of people, but is about to kill Cam, the EMT. Will, on the other hand, is a character who's desperate. You know, he doesn't really have a need to kill people. It's not his nature to break the law. He's a marine. You know, he's like, what do you call him, ex-marine or retired or whatever. He can't find a job. He's got insurance issues. He's got to like he's cornered. He's an animal. He's a beast who will do anything, right, to make sure his family's okay. He got cornered. He's desperate, so he took the job. You know, and it's not. And again, it's not like they're what do you call them? They're not shoot 'em up kind of people. And especially Will. He's not out to like kill anyone, right? And so, but he's the guy who shoots the cop in the first place. So that's another critique I had I didn't mention. So the other critique I had in the movie, which it works as a story mechanic, but as far as a character, it doesn't make sense. Why would Will shoot the cop when he's not a killer? He would have used the butt of his gun and knocked the back of the head of the cop. He wouldn't have shot him. You know, that's a huge a character flaw. That if anybody would have shot him, it would have been Danny, right? Yeah, I stopped vaping. I haven't vaped in 3 days. Thanks for noticing. I quit vaping. Uh, I forced myself to quit vaping, and I did it. I quit vaping. Heck yeah. Um, do I want to vape? Yeah, I do. I I do. I really do want to vape, but I'm really forcing myself to stop. But anyways, yeah, the story. So that was one critique I didn't mention. I didn't. Yeah, 3 days I did it. Yeah. Now the trick is to not buy one, and I'm good. um. So yeah, that's a big critique I have. A character flaw. Like Danny wouldn't have. Will wouldn't have been the one who shoots the cop, but he ends up shooting him, which didn't make sense because if you're a Marine, you know that you can use the butt of your gun to knock somebody out. So the fact that he froze and shot the cop, it didn't make sense to me. It was like, nah, that's not believable. But it works as a story point that serves the whole movie, right? But again, it didn't make sense, you know. And Danny was the one that was like, "Don't shoot anybody. Don't shoot cops. We're not here to shoot people." Right? He was very like all about that. You call him a junkie. Ringo Anselmo. You going back soon, Ringo? Yeah, no, I don't think so. That's where you're wrong, Bubba. Ringo Anselmo. That's where you're mistaken. Um, but I will say that so judgmental, so judgmental. That's that's fine. You're gonna find people on YouTube who are extremely judgmental and ignorant. I will say that, very ignorant. Um, but yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that it didn't make sense character wise. But characters do make mistakes. People do make mistakes, right? That's a part of life. Um, and it serves the story mechanics. Anyways, yeah, Danny goes from not trying to shoot anybody to shooting a lot of people, and eventually he was gonna do a whole like he got cornered. He thought he thought Will was dead. So Danny, at the end of the movie, Cam accidentally shoots Will. It was an accident. When Danny learns this, he loses his mind. He's like, "You're the one, you killed Danny. He saved the cop. He saved you, and you killed him. Like, what is wrong with you?" He loses his mind. He's pretty much cornered by the cops. He's got no way out. He's thinking suicide. He's thinking he's gonna shoot Cam in the head, and so he goes insane. At this point, he's lost his mind. He doesn't have a strong ethic like Will does. Will has a very you can tell he's more ethical of a person, even though he's cornered. He starts out not exactly the most ethical person, but you can tell that he's got more of an ethical thing going on. Frencher says, "Have you tried shaving your beard or not? Kind of looks cool if you grow it out more." I did think about shaving it. I trim it every now and then. I thought about growing it out. Yeah, I trimmed it. I'm thinking about shaving it, so it's just the goatee. I look pretty cool with the goatee. Um, but yeah, so Danny gets worse and worse throughout the movie, even though he has his moments, but those moments only exist because of Will and his ethical backbone, right? Because of Will, the cop lives and the EMT lives, right? If it was up to Danny, he would have left him to die because he doesn't care. Like he's like, it's not my problem, right? But Will, he basically has. There's a moment called the Dark Night of the Soul in stories where the character pretty much loses hope, and in some ways, like throughout the movie, finds hope within himself. Right. Well, there's a moment where Danny's like, they make it to the cartel hideout, and they're like, we're there, we did it. All we have to do is walk away, leave the cop and the EMT behind, let him die. Leave him to the cartel, and we're good, we're free. And Will, that's Danny, right? That's Jake Gyllenhaal's character. Will is like, I can't do that. I can't leave those two to die because it's unethical. Like I can't just walk away and live with myself, knowing that I'm doing this to other people. Like it's not in me to do this. I'm not like you, Danny. I'm not gonna leave these two people to die. So he's willing to stand up to the cartel and be like, we're taking them with us. And then so this puts Danny in a really horrible position, which could have been avoided if they had just abandoned the ambulance, had a chance, which they had a huge chance to do it, but for some reason they didn't do it. And like I said, I think the only reason they didn't do it was because of story mechanics, not because the characters would have abandoned the ambulance. That's just logical. But because the writers needed these last scenes in the movie, they made another horrible choice, which was to take them with them to the cartel, which was really dumb. Um, but you know, it is what it is. Story mechanics, whatever they want it for the story. It makes for a better entertainment, better ending. Whatever. Not necessarily better, but yeah, a little bit better. Yeah, more dramatic, more cop chasing, more guns being fired off. You have dilemmas. You're facing off with conflict. Yeah, of course, it's gonna make for a better storytelling. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly believe those characters would not have made that really bad choice. But anyways, that's just me. Um, so they're in the dilemma. This puts Danny in dilemmas. He's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna, Will is not willing to let the cop and AMT die, which puts him in a horrible position because the cartel is gonna kill Will, essentially. And Danny's like, you're not gonna kill my brother. Okay. So this puts him in a really bad situation. So what they end up doing is they shoot all the cartel members, they kill them all, they get away, which, doing that got the cops back on them. So they should have known. They should have known this was going to happen. For some reason, they didn't think about that. I don't know why. If I was a bank robber and I was in this situation, I would have been like, no, we're not taking the EMT and the cop to the cartel. They're going to kill them. It's obvious, and Will was all about protecting and saving the cop. I mean, even Danny to a point was like, we don't kill cops. We don't do that. And so he was actually helping save the cop. There's very various instances in the movie where he's like, save the cop, don't let him die. Yes, it served a purpose in a sense that if the cop dies in the ambulance, then all the cops can just start shooting the ambulance, essentially. But because there's a cop in there who's pretty much a hostage on the verge of dying, which creates a lot of tension and suspense, it's like they can't do all the tricks that they can normally do to stop, a bank robber. They can't just throw nails on the ground and pop tires. It could kill the cop. So they can't just have snipers. It could kill the cop. They got to be very careful of what they do. And then you have the EMT who's helping the cop live, and then you have Will, who's O negative, and he's giving his blood to the cop, so the cop doesn't die. So there's a lot going on, so the cop doesn't die. I mean, it's weird because in the movie, the characters you know, the EMT says, well, Will was the one that saved the cop and saved me, but it was also Danny. Danny saved the cop, and the this is where like my brain just goes it doesn't work, right? Like had they just abandoned the ambulance when they were under the bridge, then they could have really saved them, right? But instead, they drive them directly to the cartel, which to me signals you're putting them in harm's way. Why if you're trying to keep the cop alive, if Danny's rule, which he has a rule which is don't shoot cops, is to not hurt cops, and Will is also trying to save their lives, why would you drive the ambulance to a cartel hideout where they can't just let them go? They know where their hideout is. They can't just let the cop and the EMT go. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any freaking sense. Sorry, but it doesn't. Anyways, so that's why when it's like they're like the EMT's like, yeah, Will saved your life and my life. It's like, did he? He drove you guys to the heart of the cartel hideout. That's not saving you guys. That's putting you in danger. Doesn't make any sense, right? So, anyways, that's why I don't like that story point. It pisses me off because it's just so out of place. Makes me angry. Anyways, so that's my big critique of the movie. That it doesn't make sense. But if you're trying to make a fun movie, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. But if you're trying to stay true to the characters and their choices and what they stand for, It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyways, those are my critiques. Now I'm going to do the plot outline. I'm going to go pretty much from beginning to end of the movie. This is I usually do it right after my critiques and character arcs and all that business. So we're in LA. It starts out with flashbacks of Danny as a kid and Will as a kid. Will is black, Danny's white, and so it's like you don't really know they're brothers. You just think they're friends, right? And then throughout the movie, you learn they're brothers, right? So then it goes to where does it go to? It goes to modern day LA. It goes to Will. He's older now, and you see his military badges and pictures of him in the military, and he's on the phone and he's having trouble. He's at his house. His wife is there, Amy, and he's got a baby, and he's trying to get somebody on the phone. He can't do it, and it's about cancer. His wife has cancer, and it's like he needs to talk to somebody about the insurance, but because it's a experimental surgery, he can't get anybody on the phone to talk to anybody, and the insurance won't give him coverage, and so he's pretty much cornered, and he doesn't have a job. So he has a little he lies to his wife a little bit. He's like heading out, and the wife's like, there was an unmarked number that called, and Will is like, no, that wasn't Danny, if you're worried about that, and straight up lied. He lies a lot, surprisingly, in the beginning, because again, he's desperate. He's trying to. They're like white lies, they're little lies so that his wife doesn't worry. So in essence, it's like, okay, I get why you would do that, but at the same time, I mean, you might as well just say, hey, I'm having trouble with the insurance. I'm going to keep trying, instead of covering up for it, right? But anyways, I understand why he would do it, right? He doesn't want to make his wife feel bad, right? Anyways, so he lies that he got the insurance. He lies that he's going to go to a job interview, right? He goes to see Danny. Um, we cut to there's a scene we cut to where we have Cam. She's like the head EMT in the ambulance. They get a call. They're on their way. There's this little girl. They find she's got like it's a car wreck. The little girl's name is Lindsay, and she has like those metallic, what do you call them? The metallic fences, like they're poles with like pointy points at the top of them. Anyways, it looks like the car got hit from the side, and it fell into those bars, and I guess one of the bars the bars got into the car. It looks like one of the bars went through the kid's stomach. It looks pretty serious. So Cam is there. The other guy's name is Alex. It's like his first day on the job. So, anyways, they help her out, and they're talking. They're talking about how Cam is well known as like the best EMT, right? Anyways, so they do all that. We cut back to Will, and he's arriving at this place, and it's like a big it looks like a big car garage, right? And he meets Castro, who's sitting down in the front office. He's just like this, I don't know, he's just there kind of lazily. He looks like he works there potentially, right? Like painting cars or something. Anyways, he's asking for Danny. He tells him he's in the back. They open the garage door. He walks in, and this garage is huge. It's like a warehouse, and there's Lamborghinis, there's Ferraris, there's Corvettes, there's Mustangs, like all these like classic cars. It reminds me of something out from like Gone from 60 Seconds or something. Anyways, they're talking. Danny and Will are talking. Will is like, "Hey, listen, like I know we haven't seen each other, and it just seems like I'm just coming to you because I need something. I'm sorry about that." And Danny's like, "Look, that doesn't matter. We're brothers. that they go through, like, they talk about their dad, and Will was adopted as a little black kid into their family, and they consider each other brothers. Like, they're very serious about that. They don't joke around. They don't think they're not brothers. They grew up together. Anyways, um, Will is like, I need money. I need like $200,000, something like that. And Danny's like, well, I can help you, but I don't have that I can just give you that. You have to do something with me for us to get the money, which is turns out to be a bank robbery job, right? And Will is like, this is insane. I'm not doing this, right? And true to every story, true to every story, every hero's journey, for the main character always says no, right? He's always going to be like, no, I don't want to do this. He either gets pushed into it, or, he has no choice because, like, but anyways, once he makes that decision to take on whatever journey he's going on, his regular life, he's exiting his regular life. Prayakashamra. I don't know what that Efn. EFN. So he's thinking about it. He's like, no, I'm not doing this. He's kind of arguing back and forth with Danny. And Danny's like, we gotta, like, if you do this, we gotta go now. Because the other bank robbers are here. They're ready to go. We gotta leave in 5 minutes. The car we're gonna use is here. Roberto, he shows up, and he delivers this, like, truck that looks like a delivery truck that they're gonna use to you know get out of there. Breaking Bad, which is a great show, by the way. Um, but yeah, anyways, Roberto's there. It's the first time we see Roberto. He delivered the truck, and he says, like, like, Poppy sent his regards. So we get, like, a sense that there's this guy named Poppy. We don't know who he is, but we see him later. Anyways, right? We cut back to the EMTs, the Cam, and I think his other guy's named Alex, and they're just, like, hanging out, having lunch. They're talking. It seems like Alex is trying to get to know Cam, maybe more than just friends, right? And then we cut to the cops. Now these cops, Mark, and I think his name is Keith, is the other cop, or yeah, I think it's Keith, something like that. They're in the car. They're talking, and Keith is like, "Yeah, it's like, the reason why I go to this bank all the time is because there's this girl I want to talk to and ask out." Anyways, so this is where this whole intersection happens, and these two cops is what causes the whole bank robbery to go to shit. If it wasn't for these two cops, right? Like, if it wasn't for this rookie who, like, was too scared to ask this girl out, and then the other cop is driving, turns the car around, is like, we're gonna go back to that bank, and you're gonna just go up to her and ask her out, no more delays. That moment, that decision by those cops, is what causes the whole entire bank robbery to go to shit. What are the chances? If it wasn't for those two cops, there's a good chance they could have gotten away. But at the same time, there's something going on that we don't really understand as when the first time we see it. So finally, Will agrees to go. They're on their way to the bank job. It's 32 million that, that's pretty much left unguarded. They can go sneak in, do a bank heist, get away real quick. Anyways, so already we have two problems that, like, causes issues in the bank robbery. The first issue is that cop shows up right in the middle of the bank robbery, trying to ask this girl, the bank teller, out, which is like a huge, like, what the hell, man? What are the chances of a cop wanting to ask a teller out right when you're doing a bank robbery, right? What are the chances of that, right? Anyways, coincidences happen. It's okay if it happens in movies. The other issue is the driver of that delivery truck that's, like, going to be their getaway car. He's kind of an idiot. He's an idiot that causes so many problems, but at the same time, the truck itself causes problems. It like stalls. The truck stalls, and the cop who's waiting outside. So there's a cop inside the bank who's trying to ask the teller out, and all the bank robbers are acting cool. And then you have the cop outside who's like, "Hey, let me help you out with the truck. I know something about engines. Let me get you going." So they pop the hood, and this cop is like fixing the engine. So it's such a weird, tense moment. You know, it's like, why is this happening? Like the worst thing that could ever happen, which is true to storytelling. You always want the worst possible thing to happen, that could happen in that moment. In this moment, you want the worst thing that could happen, you want it to happen. And that is pretty much the worst thing that could ever happen during a bank robbery. Is your freaking truck stalls, you have a cop working on it, then you have another cop inside the bank who's trying to ask a teller out during the bank robbery. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to you if you're trying to rob a bank. Anyways, finally, the bank figures the cop inside finally figures out that they're being robbed, and by the time he could like try to do anything, Jake Gyllenhaal, his character Danny pulls a gun on him, and he's like, "Look, these are your choices, and these are the choices that matter. If you do anything stupid, you're gonna die, your future girlfriend's gonna die, and it's gonna be problems, right? So you don't want that. So it's your job to keep everybody safe. Don't do anything stupid, right?" And then you have this other group of people that are watching the bank robbers, and they are SIS. They are special intel like squad or something, special investigation squad. And what they do is they investigate like bank robbers, I guess, before they hit the bank. And so what they do is they allow the bank robbers to hit the bank. And as soon as they come out, that's when they come and confront the bank robbers. That's what SIS does. So they're waiting there. SIS is waiting there. But at the beginning, though, when you see them, you don't understand what's going on. You don't know that's SIS. It looks like another group of criminals who are going to hijack the bank robbers. That's how it comes off. You don't learn it's SIS until a bit later. And even when they put on their cop garments and bulletproof as police, at first you almost don't believe it. You're like, who are these guys? They're pretending to be police now, but it turns out they really are police and they really are SIS. But anyways, but in the moment of it, you don't really get that. You're just like, who are these guys? Anyways, it turns out that they're getting the money, right? They're loading the robbers inside. They're loading up the money, the bags. There's 8 million each bag. There's four bank robbers. Um, there's 32 million they're collecting. Anyways, there's a moment where the cop outside sees inside that there's something fishy going on. He sees that his partner is got a gun to him or something. He sees the bank robbers. So he's like, "Oh shit, this is going down." So, "Hey, what's up, Gopanariro?" Sorry if I totally butchered that. Where are you from? The cop sees there's something going down. So he starts shooting, he's about to start shooting, at the bank robbers, but the driver, right, is outside. He just got his engine fixed by the cop. He slams on the gas and tries to run over the cop. And the cop actually jumps out at the last minute before he gets ran over. Anyways, that's when the shitstorm happens. Okay, this is where everything goes completely south for the bank robbers. You have this cop who, he pulls out his machine gun out of the car. There's the driver of the truck. He's got a shotgun and he's trying to shoot from outside this truck, window area that he's got. He's trying to shoot the cop, and he's missing. And the cop is like pinned. He's pinned between the truck, the guy driving the truck with a shotgun, and in front of him there's a guy shooting a machine gun through the glass. Anyways, somehow he survives the shooting, right? But but more cops show up. I guess the cop outside calls for help. Anyways, more cops show up in a matter of like to one, like just 1 minute. Just boom, cops are everywhere. Because I have a dog. It's really annoying. I gotta get a what do you call those things? The little tape, little hair roller. I gotta get a hair pet roller so I can take all the hairs off my. This hat's really old too. How about no hat? No hat. No hat or hat? What do you guys think? Hat or no hat? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, big shootouts. We're talking like 5 cars, police cars show up, SWAT team shows up, snipers show up, SIS is also on the scene shooting at the bank robbers. You have Danny and Will, who have the cop. They go a different route because they don't see the truck. They're just like, I don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. They go a different way. So pretty much what happens is all the robbers die. They get shot to hell, except Danny and Will. They're still inside. And there's a moment where this is the moment that changes the direction. I mean, besides the robbery going to shit, this moment here also creates like the entire movie. So what happens is there's a moment where Will is on the walkie. He's trying to get the driver. He's trying to figure out who's doing the shooting. He's like, "What's going on?" And Will's and I mean Will is and Danny's like, "Forget about it," because he knows what's going on. They're shooting. They're all dying. He's smart. He's like, "Forget about it. Forget about it. Just leave it alone. We gotta go." And while Will and Danny are kind of arguing, the cop sees his opportunity to tackle Danny on the ground. He does. He's like fighting Danny. And so Will is kind of freaked out by this, but he's like, get off my brother, get off my brother. And so he takes his gun and shoots the cop twice. Pop, pop, right? You hear 2 pops. And Will is freaked out because he's like, the guns are for intimidation, they're for defense. We're not here to kill people. Like we're not here to do a shootout. This is not what we do. And so, Will's kind of freaking out, Danny's freaking out. And he's like, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. So they run off and they leave the police officer on the ground bleeding. And so they run off. They're looking for a way out. They come to a back door, and as soon as they walk out, you see all these cop cars surround right the building. And so they go back inside. They're being shot at. They go back inside the building, look for a different way out. They go like to like there's a garage portion of the building. They're running around looking for a place. They even run to a different lobby of the building, and they notice all the cop cars out there. There's cops on the roof now. There's cops everywhere. There's no way. There's nowhere they can go, right? And they're being chased. At this moment, you have SIS, they're inside the building and they're chasing them like through the garage portion of the building. And so they're able to sneak in through a doorway, like it's like a stairway, and they go down a level, and they don't know where to go. Like Danny is like he doesn't know what to do. Will, on the other hand, sees an opportunity. He sees that an ambulance went inside the garage and picked up is leaving basically. The ambulance comes in, picks up Keith, the cop who got shot. They put him in the ambulance and they're on their way out. Well, at that very moment, Danny sees his opportunity. He sees the ambulance. He's like, "Oh, that's our way out." So he walks in front of the ambulance with his gun, and he's like, "Stop, stop, get out of the ambulance!" Right? He tells the driver to stop and get out. So the driver does. And see, this is I made a critique about this because like this is what I don't understand. Right? Danny is all about not killing anyone. Right? And also Will is also on the same page, but Will ends up shooting the cop. But Danny, on the other hand, he doesn't shoot the driver. He hits him in the head with the back of the gun, right, to knock him out a little bit. So that's what I don't understand. Why is it that Danny, they both have the same rule? We're not here to kill anybody, especially cops. Yet Will shoots a cop, right? He almost kills the cop. So it doesn't make sense to me. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like, anyways, that's the story. That's what happens. Anyways, so they knock out the driver. Danny tells Will to put on the vest, right? The driver EMT hat and thing to drive the ambulance. They put the bags in the back of the ambulance, like the money and the guns that they have. I think they have $16 million in total. Anyways, they take Cam, the female EMT, who's like the best, who's got a reputation for being the best. Anyways, they take her as hostage, and they take the cop as hostage, essentially. And so they're on their way out, and Will's driving the ambulance. Here's the other part I don't understand in the movie. In the movie, Will has a bit of a reputation for being a really good driver. Okay. But for some reason, while they do the bank robbery, they don't set him up as the driver. They set him up as another bank robber, which again doesn't make sense. If he's the best driver of them all, wouldn't you logically be like, well, he's the best driver, he's going to be our getaway driver, and we'll put you as the robber? That's what I would have done. But anyways, for some reason they don't do that, even though he's got a reputation for being a really good driver. Doesn't make sense, but anyways, it doesn't matter. So anyways, now Will is driving the ambulance, right? And they're leaving. He's in the EMT vest and he's got the hat. They leave the other guy on the ground. So here comes SIS and in their vehicles, and they stop the ambulance. And they're like, whoa, who let you in here? Like, we blocked everything. Nobody got in, nobody got out, that kind of thing. And and Will is pretending to be the EMT driver. He's like, we got to go to the hospital. Like, we got a cop back here. We got to take him in, right? And so Danny hides in a corner, the very like back corner, and he's like, "There's two ways out of this: me shooting you and everybody, or you play along and we get out of here." Right? He tells that to Cam. So here come the cops. They open the back doors, and the cops are like, "Well, who is that? What's going on?" He's like, and Cam is like, "No, that's just a cop. This cop is gonna die if you don't let us go. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go now." Right? So the cops go, "Okay, okay." They shut the doors and let the ambulance go. So at this moment, you're like, "Oh shit, they got away." At this moment, you're thinking, "Holy crap, they just got away." Right? The bank robbers are thinking it. They're like, "Oh my god, we actually got away with this." Right? So at that moment, Whale's driving. He searches for the company vans and vehicles. Usually have a little chip or something that tracks them. So he takes that out and throws it out the window. And Danny tells them that there's a getaway car they can go to that's like a few blocks away, right? They just got to make it there, and they're home free, which becomes the basis of another argument later on. But basically, um, as they're escaping, they're met with a helicopter flying over them. So they stop. They're in an alleyway, and they're like, "Oh shit, they got helicopters! Like they're gonna spot us." So they think about what to do. They're like, "Do we run? Like, what do we do?" And Will's like, "No, no, no, no. We stay in the ambulance and we drive off to the other car and we get away. That's the plan, right? And we'll let the cop and EMT go. Like, we're not going to take them with us or anything." So that's the plan. The plan is now, okay, like, we got to get to the getaway car. So they're driving, they're driving, they're driving. They get spotted. They spot like the cop spots the driver, the actual driver, like on the ground with blood on his head. Is like, "What happened? What's going on?" And the driver's like, "I got knocked out. They stole the ambulance." And the cops like, "Holy crap!" So that's when they figure out that the guys are in an ambulance. They got to track them down and whatnot, right? So that's when the whole thing. This is when, like, I don't know. Yeah, I would say at this moment, Act Two really starts. Boom, we're in Act Two. Okay, Act Two now is pretty much them, the robbers, trying to get away in the ambulance. And I mean, it's the whole beefy part of the movie, right? Is them in the ambulance with the cop and the EMT. That's the rest of the movie, essentially. So now we're like in Act Two. It's not about no longer about the bank robbery. It's about escaping and getting home, essentially, right? And so we're in Act Two. The cops are on it fast. SIS is on it. They even have a special vehicle that's got like computers, and they can see from different vantage points from helicopters and different vehicles. They can tap into cybersecurity and tap into phones and do all kinds of stuff in the truck. It's pretty cool. So you have this Captain Monroe guy who's the head of SIS, and he's in charge of like strategizing and catching the robbers, and he does like stuff by the book, which like Will knows because he's a bank robber. Anyways, throughout the movie, when Monroe is talking to the FBI guy, the FBI guy tells him, yeah, he studied all the techniques. He went to the school up in Maryland for FBI or whatever, Special Investigations Unit, whatever. He was there. He was there when I was there. So that's what he says. Anyways, so he's a smart guy. And anyways, he knows the tactics and whatnot. And but anyways, so their Act Two starts. They're trying to get to the vehicle. They don't get to it. They don't get it. But there's a moment where they're stopped in the alleyway where Cam actually tries to run away, but Will is like, or Danny stops her from running away and tells her to get back in there. And this is a story arc moment for the EMT Cam, because Cam was about to abandon the cop. She was gonna run away because her character flaw is that she doesn't care about people. She only cares about doing her job. And later in the movie, she learns to care about people. That's her big character arc. But anyways, at this moment, she tries to abandon the cop, but she's unsuccessful. And the cop's dying, and even Will is like, he's dying. Like, come back and save him. And Danny's got a gun to her and is like, we need you. You got to come back to the car. We're not gonna let you go because they don't want the cop to die. Anyway, so she gets back in the ambulance, starts working on the cop. He's like starting to have a heart attack, or not a heart attack. He's like starting to flatline. She saves him. Uh, Danny has not Danny. Will, who's driving, has O negative blood, so he can give the cop blood. So essentially, that's how the cop survives, by Will giving his blood to the cop. Anyways, that's when that starts. Um, they're on their way. They're being chased by cop cars. They can't get to the getaway car. They're being chased by cop cars, and helicopters. And that's when Will argues with Danny. He's like, "You should have left the cop car underneath a bridge. That way, no one would have spotted us. We could have gotten away." And then that's when they start thinking, like, "Wait a minute. There's this thing called the Texas change up or whatever. It's a military term. I don't know what it's called again, but essentially, you go to a bridge like in a vehicle, and there's like six other vehicles that look exactly like your vehicle, and they all spread out, right? And it makes it really hard to track which one's which, right? So Will gives Danny that idea. So Danny calls up the cartel, which Roberto was the one that hooked him up with the getaway truck and whatnot. So he calls Roberto. He talks to Poppy. We meet Poppy for the first time, which he was introduced in the beginning of the movie a little bit. Anyways, you know, Will is like, "Hey, I'll give you $8 million if you help me do this Texas exchange thing underneath the bridge, right? We need like 5 ambulances. We need you to go steal 5 ambulances, hide them underneath the bridge. I'm gonna shake the cops for a moment where I can drive underneath the bridge, and we'll do this whole thing, right? I'll give you $8 million, right?" Poppy's like, "Okay, let's do that. Sounds good." So, anyways, um, so now they have a plan, and they're gonna try to stick to it. And eventually, what happens is they get to the midpoint of the movie, and in the midpoint, they discover that the cop has a second bullet wound, and he's dying. He's bleeding out and dying, and so they have to operate on him to take the bullet out. But the problem is nobody's a surgeon, right? The EMT is not a surgeon, so At this point, Danny calls a doctor that the EMT knows and is like, "You're gonna give her the step-by-step playbook to do surgery to get the bullet out." And so that's what they do. They have like he calls a surgeon, the surgeon calls these other two experts, and they're on like video phone or whatever. They're talking and going through the whole surgery. There's a moment where it's like, oh, the bullet hit the spleen, and there's a moment where the doctors are like, well, if the spleen ruptures, he's gonna bleed out to death. We don't want that to happen. So of course, what happens? The worst thing that could ever happen. You always want when stuff goes bad, you always want it to be the worst possible thing. As far as story mechanics go, when you're having a moment in the film and things are going good, you ask yourself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen right now? If you're a writer, right? And this is the worst possible thing that could happen. The bullet, the spleen erupts, the screen goes dead because it was low on battery. So the last thing the doctors saw was this guy's spleen exploding, which you pretty much will die in 60 seconds and bleed out to death. So Cam thinks quickly, and she has a clip, her hair clip. She uses her hair clip to clip an artery that leads to the spleen, which stops the bleeding. So she's able to save him, save the cop, and stop the bleeding. And they patch him up. But the doctors are underneath. They're under the assumption that the cop died because they saw the spleen erupt, and like I said, 60 seconds. That's all it takes for a guy to bleed out to death. Anyway, so they're under the assumption that he died, and so Captain Monroe, the guy, the head of the SIS, talks to the doctor. He's talking to them. He's like, give it to me straight. What's going on? He's like, is he dead? And the doctors just assume he is because his spleen ruptured, and so they explain, yeah, even the best surgeons couldn't save him, right? Anyways, yeah, Cam and Will do save him, but they don't know that. So the cops, SIS, is like, okay, they just killed a cop. Now we can go full out. We're gonna shoot him. We're gonna block him. We're gonna do everything that we've been not doing because they have a cop pretty much hostage and on the verge of dying, right? So they go full out. SIS Captain Monroe is like set up the snipers, set up the blockades, the everything, the sweepers, everyone that's going to come in and shoot at them, set it up. So they know where they're heading. They're tracking the car, the ambulance, and whatnot. So there's a moment where there's the FBI. What's his name? FBI Clark, something Clark. He's like the head of. He runs his own unit, and it's like bank robbery unit. Anyways, he's with them, and he calls the EMT using the cop's phone, and so because he wants to warn the EMT that they're gonna shoot the robbers, and so it's that moment in that phone conversation that the EMT is like, the cop's not dead, the cop's alive. And so right when she says that, the FBI agent's like, "What? He's alive?" He tells Captain Monroe, and they're like, "Call off the shooting, call off the shooting." But at that moment, they're already shooting at him, right? They're basically going to shoot him. It's like seconds, right? It's just any second they're going to shoot him. And so the EMT Cam actually goes up to Will and Danny. Is like, they have snipers. They're going to shoot you like right now. And so they start like swerving and whatnot. So the bullets kind of miss, and they're able to get away. And once they get away, this really pisses Danny off because they try to kill him and whatnot, and he's just like, really pissed. So he's got to show them that he means business. So he pretends to like shoot and kill Cam. That through the radio, the cops are listening, but he doesn't actually do it. But this pisses Will off. Will's like, "You're not gonna hurt her. You're not gonna hurt the cop. We're not hurting anybody." Which, duh, Danny's not gonna do that. But he had to show the other cops that he was serious, that he will hurt somebody. But it's not his nature to do it. But he had to be like, show that he's serious. Anyways, Will and Danny are fighting physically. Like while Will is driving, they're just punching each other and whatnot. And because like Will thinks he's losing his mind. Will is like, "You're losing your mind, Danny." Like, he didn't say that, but it's essentially what he thinks because you can tell by how he's reacting, and he just thinks he's gonna kill him. Which Danny's like, "I'm not gonna kill him. I just gotta make them think that I'm gonna kill him, right?" So they back off. So, anyways, they keep going. There's a part where you know the FBI calls them and is trying to convince Will to just stop and turn themselves in. And Danny's like, "There's no way that's gonna happen." And Will agrees. He's like, "That's not gonna happen." And so he gets a call from his wife, and his wife doesn't know what's going on. And so Danny pretends, I'm sorry, Will, who's driving and gets the call from his wife, is pretending that he's on the job, that he got the job, and he's like, "I kind of see my baby." So it's like we're in Act Two. We're like we're past the midpoint. We're like in the second part of the Act Two, and we're going through so many emotions, right? We're going through they just almost died. They're fighting. Now there's a moment of like emotional ease, like a little bit of like, oh, like he's the father of this baby, this and that. And then there's a bit of a comical relief moment where they're listening to music that's like from the 80s. It's like really funny. So your emotions go like this for a while, up and down, up and down. And then so suddenly they get to they're talking to Poppy, and everything is set. They got the ambulances. Castro's there to paint the ambulance green or something, and then they have some other things set up for the cops. Anyways, so we're getting closer to the client. We're getting closer to Act Three. We're almost there. But essentially, what happens is uh, the EMT, while Danny and Will were fighting, Danny was like, "I have a plan. We have to go to Boyle Heights. That's where the exchange is going to happen." And so the EMT overhears that and texts the FBI guy, "Hey, they're going to Boyle Heights." So as SIS knows to set up a road blockade there. And so eventually what happens is uh, Danny and Will, they talk a little bit, and they're like, "We got to do this alley oop maneuver where we get rid of the cops, how we used to do when we jacked cars back in the day." And so there's always like a little bit of history thrown in there about what they used to do, right? Anyways, so what they do is they drive to the LA River. It's basically this giant ditch way of cement. It's like really they use it in movies all the time. So they're waiting there for the cops to show up so that they can shake them because they have a maneuver. And so the helicopters show up, and Danny starts shooting them with the machine gun. And so SIS Monroe, he's the captain. He's like, "All right, so take off the helicopters, let them think that they're broken or something, like there's mechanical issues, and then we'll bring the helicopters back." And then so the ambulance is driving off. They think there's no more helicopters. All they have to do now is shake off the cars that are following them, the cop cars. And so what they do is they drive towards incoming traffic, which causes a lot of the cop cars to crash, and they stop chasing them. So at that moment, with no helicopters, no cop cars, they basically go to the bridge, right? And so that's where they meet Roberto. There's all the ambulances there. There's Castro ready to paint the ambulance. So there's a moment there. There's a moment of relief where it's like there's no cops chasing them. And this is one of my critiques. My critique was, if there was nobody chasing them at that moment and they actually got kind of scot free for a second, why didn't they just jump in a different car? Because nobody could see what car they got into. They could have split ways, gone into two different cars, and driven off with the cartel. Okay, there was plenty of cartel cars there. There was like an old school car. There's another car over there. There was a blue van they could have jumped in. No, no. They decided to paint the ambulance they've been driving all day, to paint it green and to keep holding on to the cop and the EMT. This was the moment where Will could have walked away, Danny could have walked away from the ambulance, but for some reason, which doesn't make sense to me in the movie at all, why they decided, okay, let's stay in the ambulance and drive off in the same ambulance but painted green. Doesn't make sense. Okay. I don't think no cop would have bought that. Oh, look, an ambulance, but it's painted green, so it's not them. No cop would have been like, nah, that's not them because the ambulance they were driving was a normal ambulance, painted red and yellow and white. That's a green ambulance. That looked like it was spray painted in like 5 minutes. It wasn't like a nice job. It was like a really shitty job. You would think cops are smart enough to be like, oh shit, they try to paint the ambulance, you know. But I didn't buy it. Okay, I didn't buy that scene. They even drove they even drove by cop cars and nobody noticed them. I didn't buy the scene. I just didn't buy it. I found it too unbelievable for them to drive by cop cars and nobody noticed. Hey, an ambulance, but it's painted green. Maybe we should stop that ambulance and see what's going on there? No. Nobody noticed it. Nobody stopped them. I didn't believe it, but that's what happened in the movie. So you have all these other ambulances drive off from under the bridge. One is rigged to blow up. And anyways, um, that's what happens. You have one ambulance set to drive. Roberto, the Mexican, is driving the ambulance with C4, and so he's driving it towards the blockade that the SIS made. So he jumps out of the back of the ambulance, rolls on the ground. He's got a remote, and so as soon as the ambulance comes to the blockade that the SIS made, because they knew to be at Boyle Heights, because that was the intel that was given to them, that he pushes the button right when the ambulance hits the cop cars. It blows up. Everything blows up. And on top of that, the cartel has a remote control car with a minigun inside of it, like a really beastie machine gun, right? So they do a remote control, drive this car down a bridge to where the barricade was, where the explosion just happened, and they shoot their minigun and just shoot everybody. But for some reason, only like two cops get hit. Really weird. But anyways, that's like again, you got machine gun fire everywhere, but only like two cops die. That's kind of weird. You'd think it would be a massacre. That was like another critique I had in the movie. And guess who dies? Captain Monroe, the Captain SIS guy. He dies. It's just like you only see one other cop dead on the ground, and then SIS captain gets shot like right in the heart, and he's dead pretty much. So, but also another critique I had in that very moment where they do the blockade before all the shit went down. Uh, Captain Monroe was pissed at the cop who his name is Mark. He's the guy in the beginning of the movie that goes to the bank with Keith, the other cop, and the rookie cop. He gets uh, shot and whatnot. Anyways, this is the same cop from earlier in the movie, Mark. He's there, and he did something earlier which made Captain Monroe mad, which was he took his dog by accident. His Captain Monroe's dog was put in this cop car that Mark, this officer, took, and so he was like mad at him for doing that, and he was there at the blockade. So Captain Monroe was like, "Where's my dog?" And the guy was like, "Right here." He's like, "That made me angry. You get out of here. Take him out." So, but for some reason, I always found that weird because this is what happens later, right? The last thing we see of Mark, that cop, is him going, "Okay, I'm gonna get out of here." But then the big explosion happens, the shootout happens, and guess what? He's still there. So that never made sense, right? Like what? It's like the explosion happens and he's on the ground and he sees Roberto running down the street and he's like, I'm gonna go chase after him. But it never made sense because he was like, how is he laying on the ground if he was inside of a car? Doesn't make sense. That's another weird critique I have. It doesn't make sense because he was inside of a car. How is he laying on the ground now after the explosion? Did he just fly out of the car? Does what? How did he end up on the ground? Makes no sense. And so he gets up. He starts chasing after Roberto with a machine gun. He's running after Roberto. He's got this big machine gun. He's running after Roberto. Roberto runs into a warehouse. Mark, catches up to him. And when he catches up to Roberto, he magically his machine gun disappears. It's like suddenly he doesn't have a machine gun anymore. He tackles Roberto, but the whole time he was running after him with a machine gun. And so the moment that he tackles Roberto, it's like, what happened to the machine gun? It just like disappeared. Makes no sense. How did the machine gun disappear magically? Doesn't make any sense. Anyways, Roberto gets shot in the head by his own gun because they're wrestling. They're wrestling with Roberto's gun, and Roberto's trying to shoot the cop in the head, but he wrestles it out a little bit, and Roberto gets shot in the head. Poppy sees that on live television because the helicopters are broadcasting, and that's his son, right? So he's like freaked out. So, anyways, all that happens, right? And so you got Captain Monroe who dies in the big shootout, and now you have Roberto who dies um, after being chased by this Mark guy who was supposed to be inside of a car, but somehow ends up being outside in the explosion, and somehow has a machine gun that he's running after Roberto that somehow magically disappears. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. So later on, right, Danny and Will are in this green painted ambulance. They drive off. They get away. There's no cops after them. They drive into a cartel warehouse. It's like secretive, right? And so that's the big problem, right? Because the cop and the EMT are in the ambulance, and you pretty much know the cartel's not going to let them live. I mean, that's a given. Anyways, Will Danny's excited because he's like, we got away, we did it, right? But Will is like, we're not scot free yet. We're not. There's helicopters everywhere. We're not actually free. So, anyways, Poppy's really upset that his son died. Roberto was killed. So there's a moment of like, you know what? There's a moment where you got a feeling where he's like, I'm just gonna take all the money. My son just died. I'm taking it all. Screw you guys. But Will Danny is like family to Poppy, so it's like, okay, we're family, 50-50. Okay, I'll stick to my word. I'll stick to my word. Done deal. Sorry, your son died. But there's a problem. Will has his like moment of dark night of the soul, right? He's searching. He's lost hope that they're gonna go home, that they're gonna get away free. There's no chance. He's like, there's no way we're getting away from this. Like, we're gonna get caught. We're not getting out of this. Not only that, he has a moment of basically a good guy moment. He's like, I'm not gonna leave the cop and the EMT to die here. Okay, just not gonna do it. So this puts him and Will in a very awkward position with the cartel because the cartel is like, all right, you got half your money. You can go now, or you can stay here. We'll get you a van. We'll get you out. But we're taking the cop and we're taking the EMT because they can't live. They've seen too much, right? So Will is like, okay, well, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving without him. The cartel's like, well, that's an issue. That's a problem. We're gonna have to kill you too, I guess. And so, Danny's like, whoa, whoa, everybody chill out, you know, and starts like having a little conversation with Will, and he's like, I'm sorry I got you into this. It was never my intention for this to happen. We used to be so in sync. You want to go left, I want to go right. We're just so different. We should both go left. We should go both left. Go left. Go left. That's the dialogue. He's telling Will to go left, to shoot his machine gun. So they both go left in a circular motion, shooting their machine gun, and they kill all the cartel people except for the one downstairs. So they go downstairs, they shoot their way out. And this is the part of the movie where you go, "Oh my god. So stupid. So stupid." Um so Cam, the MT and the cop are kind of freaking out cuz they know they're going to die. Like the cartel's going to kill them, right? So they're hearing the bullets fly over, they're hearing the shootout. They're kind of freaking out. Here comes Danny to open the back of the ambulance, and Cam shoots, not Danny, I'm sorry, Will. Will opens the back of the door, and Cam shoots Will. Freaking shoots Will. You're like, what the hell? Like, why did you do that, you crazy dork? You dumb butt. So by accident, Cam thought that that was a cartel person trying to come in to kill them. Ends up it was Will coming in to tell him, hey, we got to go or something, and Cam shoots him. Luckily, doesn't kill him, like shoots him like up here in the shoulder, but he's given a lot of blood to the cop. So him getting shot with like not a lot of blood in him is a very dangerous situation. He could die, right? Because he's giving all his blood to the cop. So he's got low blood and he gets shot. Now he's losing blood. Not a good situation. There's a weird moment in how that scene is cut because here comes Will, right, with his gun. He picks up, no, I'm sorry, Danny. Danny comes with a machine gun in his hand. And Danny drops his machine gun on the ground. There's a really weird cut, which I forgot to mention as part of the critique, but there's a weird cut where Danny has a machine gun in his hand. He picks up Danny with one hand, right? And Cam is helping to put him in the ambulance. There's a weird cut where magically that machine gun is gone. It's just disappeared, and he picks up the machine gun that Will dropped on the ground. Really weird cut. If you watch the movie closely, it's a weird cut. It's so weird. They must have made an error, but it's so weird. Let me say that again so it makes sense. Will gets shot by Cam. Will has a machine gun in his hand. He drops it on the ground. Here comes Danny with a machine gun in hand, picks up Will off the ground. Next cut, he's got no machine gun in his hand, and he reaches down and picks up the machine gun that Will dropped. Makes no sense at all. But that's what happens. Okay. Another mistake in the movie. Whatever. You barely notice it. Anyways, they get in the ambulance, they leave, they save the cop, they save the EMT. But now the cops are back on them, and because Will is on the verge of dying, Danny drives to the hospital where he gets blockaded by all the SWAT cars and all the snipers. All the cops are on him. He's surrounded. He's blocked in. He can't escape. So at this moment, he thinks Will is dead. He also sees that a gun is inside the cabin of the ambulance. He checks it, notices a bullet's missing, and notices it's a police gun. And that's where Cam confesses that she accidentally shot Will. It's her fault, and so this really upsets Danny. Danny's like, "Oh my god, he literally, we literally killed all the cartel to save you, and you shoot Will? Like, what is wrong with you?" And he gave the cop his blood, and the cop's gonna live. You're living, and now Will is dying because of your idiocy. Like, he's so mad. He's about to kill her like on the spot. Anyways, he thinks Will is dead and blames Cam for it, and so he's like, I'm done. He's like, I'm done. We're gonna go out there, and I'm just gonna kill you in front of live television. We're gonna die together. So before he steps out, oh, guess who wakes up? Will wakes up at the last moment and shoots uh Danny in the back. As soon as he like opens the door, you see a big shot go through his heart, and he like goes down to the ground and dies. He's on the ground bleeding to death. The cops pull Will to the ground. Danny and Will are facing each other. You know, Danny's dying, and he looks up at Will, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Will. Like, sorry I brought you into this." You know, pretty much. And then Will is like, you know, like, Danny, I'm sorry I killed you. It's like, oh my god. What a it's a strange dilemma. The dilemma is Will wants to save the cop and the EMT, but the story keeps evolving towards a way where Will is forced to kill Danny. It's pretty fucked up. It's pretty fucked up in order to save the everybody. In order to save everybody, he pretty much sacrificed his brother, which is a really like shitty ending in a way. Like kind of shitty. Like it's kind of like it's a fucked up ending. You're left kind of like what the fuck is the feeling you get. It's like what the fuck, man? Like what the fuck? It's pretty fucked up. Cuz I mean, Cam shot him. Cam shot Will, right? You would think like, yeah, kill her, you know? But no, instead he kills his brother, which is like what? That doesn't make any sense, you know? So, I don't know. The ending didn't make any sense. It makes some sense, like as far as, you know, Danny is such an asshole. He's a bank robber. He's a bad dude, right? Cam is an EMT. She's innocent. She's not trying to go rob people and kill people, you know what I'm saying? So it makes sense like the worser person of the two was killed. But at the same time, you have to really think about it in a different way. It's like, that's my brother. You shot me, and now it's your fault we're in this situation. But, it's a movie, you know, it had to end in a somewhat positive note, right? In a weird it depends how you look at it, right? It depends how you look at it. It's a very shitty ending. Any way you look at it, it's a pretty shitty ending because Will's going to go to prison for a long time for hostages. He's killed a lot of people, like a lot of the cartel people he's killed. He's probably hurt a lot of people during the getaway driving. A lot of cop cars were smashed and flipped and this. So he's probably gonna go to prison for life. So it's not the best ending, even though he lives at the end and Danny dies. It's not the best ending. As far as the anti-hero goes, it's like you're kind of rooting for them. It's a strange feeling to be rooting for these guys, but at the same time, it would make sense in real life that these bad guys get caught and have a bad ending, but it feels very weird because you're rooting for them, you like them, you think they're gonna make it, you want them to make it. They end up saving the cop and Cam. So you're like, okay, sure they robbed the bank, but they're not terrible people. They're not like villainous. They're just wanted the money. And that's what Danny does. He's a bank robber. He's robbed 37 banks. He's a professional bank robber. This is the one that went to shit, you know? But and he's never killed anyone. He's never killed anyone, up to this point, in his career. He's only killed He didn't even shoot the cop. It was Will that shot the cop, you know? So in a strange way, Danny, although it was Danny who saves Will, saves the cop, saves the EMT, ends up dead. That's why it's fucked up. And then they credit Will for saving the EMT and the cop. When it was like, no, it was actually Danny who did it. It took a little nudging from Will, sure, but at the end of the day, it was actually Danny who saved all of them. That's why it's fucked up. It's like, God, it's like this is so fucked up. He saves everybody and he dies, and then he gets no credit for saving everybody. It's like, damn, that's harsh. That's so harsh. But yeah, I mean, it's messed up. The whole movie is just like it's got story problems, man. It's got character arc problems, if you ask me. Um, but anyways, there's a moment where they try to make it sweet, a sweet ending where the EMT was able to sneak in some money and give it to Will's wife for the surgery. So it's like, how sweet. Danny's dead. Like you can't make this movie feel good. You killed the most interesting actor and character in the movie, and the least guy who deserved it, if you ask me. Like he did not deserve to die, and he gets it in the end. So it's like, damn. And not only does he get it in the end, he gets killed by his brother, which is like even worse. um, who's supposed to be the most ethical one out of the bunch. He ends up killing. Do you hear what I'm saying? He ends up killing his brother, even though he's supposed to be the most ethical one out of the group. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense, right? Um, and he was the one that shot the cop. So not only did he shoot the cop, which caused this whole mess, he even killed his brother. Not a good look. Not a good look. But he ends up being like the hero in the movie. He saved the EMT, he saved the cop. He shot the cop. He killed his brother. He's actually the worst one out of between them. He's actually the worst one. That's why it's fucked up. And he comes off as like the hero of the movie a little bit, even though he goes to jail for life. And then there's a moment where the cops laying in the hospital, he's like saved, right? Uh, they're going through pictures, and the FBI guy, he's showing him a picture of Danny and a picture of Will, like back and forth, like security camera images. And the FBI guy asks the cop, "Who's the one that shot you?" He points at Will and goes, "He saved my life." He doesn't say he shot me. He says, "Will saved my life," which again is pretty fucked up considering he actually shot the cop, and if you actually examine the whole thing, it was Danny and Will that saved the cop's life. It wasn't just Will. That's why it doesn't make any sense. The ending doesn't make any freaking sense. They paint Danny as like a really bad guy when at the end of the day, it was kind of a tag team. The EMT and the cop lived because of Danny and because of Will. And the only reason Will was even alive in the first place was because Danny was smart enough to use the ambulance to get out of there. So it's like Danny was the one who made all the right choices. At the same time, Will was the one who made all the wrong choices, and he's considered the hero. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense one bit. So it's pretty messed up ending. And then so later, so the cop's like, yeah, he saved my life, blah blah blah. It cuts to the EMT. She visits the little girl in the beginning of the movie. So in the beginning of the movie, Cam, the EMT, was like, "It's just a job. Don't get attached to these people. It's just a job. It's just another Tuesday for us. Their most horrible day is just another Tuesday for us. Don't get attached to them." Is essentially her message in the beginning of the movie, which she's kind of like, kind of I don't know, not a shitty person, but kinda. Like, how do you not care for those people? Anyways, so then she comes back at the end of the movie after being through this whole ordeal. She learns to care about people. So I just and that's supposed to be like the beautiful part of the movie. Oh, it's so beautiful. Cam learns to care about people. It's like, oh my god, the worst ending. I mean, it makes sense as far as the character arc. Yeah, cool. But probably one of the worst endings in a movie I have ever seen in my life. Seriously. And the story structure isn't bad, but the moment where act act 2 is about the end, right? And they're underneath a bridge and they have a chance to get away and literally end the movie. They make the most horrible mistake ever in the movie, which doesn't make sense to me. So that moment was horrible. The ending was horrible, even though they try to make it feel good. It was like, no, nothing about this is right. It's like a really bad ending. Um, but anyways, there you go. There's the whole freaking plot outline. I did my whole critique, even added some critiques that I left out. So there you go. There you go. There's my whole movie review and plot outline. Is it entertaining? Yes. Is the acting decent? Yeah, it's watchable. You get into it. You get sucked into the story. Do you notice all the mistakes? Probably not. The movie is so fast paced. It's got so much suspense. You get sucked into it. You're not gonna notice these things. You know, if you go brain dead, essentially, and you're just like watching the movie and getting entertained, you're not going to notice these things. But because I'm not brain dead, I notice all these things and I go, wow, what a horrible movie. But it was entertaining as hell. Anyways, there you go. There's my plot review and yeah, outline review and all that. I'm done for tonight. My name is Lasso. For those who don't know, thanks for stopping in the Lasso's Passions channel. For those who don't know, this is sponsored by my book that I wrote called Dialogues Oklahoma Independent Cinema. Yes, I'm a filmmaker. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm going to be releasing Stray Kids, the movie I made for $5,000 in 15 years of my life. It's going to premiere on YouTube January 1st, 2026. So you're welcome to watch my movie. You're welcome to critique it and break it apart and tell me what you don't like about it and tell me what worked for you and what didn't. So that's going to be for free on my channel. I got a film festival called the Stay Gold Film Festival, which is going to be May 6th. Open for submissions if you have a short film and you live in the in the cities and the areas that I've made notes of that are available to submit. You are welcome to submit your short film, and there's a good chance, a very good chance. I screen all the movies that get submitted, but only and it's like a participation trophy. Everybody gets a participation trophy, but there are going to be the best winners, like the best winners. I've divided the sections into continents, and so the best short film out of Germany, the best short film out of Britain, the best short film out of France, right? Take the Indonesian, or what do we call it, Indo-Asia region, which is like Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Japan, that region. There's the Asian region, which is like China, Russia, Korea, blah blah blah, India. So everything's like broken up to continents and to states. So like you could win the best short film out of Germany, right? If you're the only one that submits out of Germany, your short film, you're gonna win best short film out of Germany. So, anyways, and yeah, so it's on filmfreeway.com, the Stay Gold Film Festival. That's what it's called. Anyways, I'm out of here. The next movie review I'm going to do is called The Covenant, which is a much better movie. Directed by Guy Ritchie, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, same actor, but a way, way better movie. You know why it's a better movie? Because it's based on a true story. It's not just made up, and so it makes more sense. Doesn't it? It has more sense to it. I thought it was a much better movie. No offense to Michael Bay. I mean, his movie is entertaining as hell. It's a spectacle, but the Covenant was even though it was action entertaining. It had a little bit of more of it just made more sense as a story. Anyways, Guy Ritchie is amazing. Anyways, yeah, that'll be Thursday. I'll do a live review of The Covenant, um, which is also available on Netflix, just like Ambulance. Both, I mean, they're both good movies. They're both good movies, but one is better than the other. I will say that. Okay, I'm out of here. Good night, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed my perspective. And if you haven't watched the whole thing, it'll be available tomorrow to watch. You can watch the whole thing from start to finish. So, with that said, thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao, ciao, mi amigos. Good night.